What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we've got some Destiny 2 news, updates and new content juice. Also, yes, Crota is now a mega sweat. And so in today's video we'll talk about the reprised raid, secret chests including one that can be soloed, but we'll also touch on the new exotic quest, the Eidolon ally, and hidden Crota's End drops which are pretty awesome. And then we'll go over Bungie's updated list of banned items for the raid weekend. Plus we'll talk about upcoming Festival of the Lost Armor, a preview of Season 23's Fireteam Finder, and a look at some new rewards coming in the final Shape expansion. So, a few things to go over today. As always, I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, get subscribed for more Destiny content. But now let's get into it. Firstly, it's worth going over Bungie's updated list of disabled items for the World First race. They've been adding to that pretty much continuously since just before the raid came out. So, for the remainder of the weekend, across the entire game, Frenzied Stacks, an all ammo reserve mods, as well as Font Armor Charge mods, Elemental Munitions mod, and the Empowering Finisher Armor mod are disabled, so those can't be used in any activities. Then for Crota's End, the Tessellation Exotic Fusion Rifle, the Warlock's Weave Walk aspect, Titan Banner of War aspect, Foe Tracer Exotic Helmet, Overload Hand Cannon Artifact mod, Malfeasance Exotic, and the second Filaments Exotic are all disabled. Once again, those are only in the raid, but that will be in effect for 48 hours, so we'll be looking at the daily reset on Sunday before any of those items can be used again. In terms of Crota's End though, Clan Elysium once again managed to get a world first completion of this, so congrats to them. Safe to say Crota's End is pretty difficult, and players have pointed out some stats versus Root of Nightmares, so we can see 1,300 teams cleared Root of Nightmares in the first 7 hours, and only 5 teams managed to clear Crota's End. So for any folks that thought it was going to be an easy raid, safe to say it has been amped up considerably in comparison to the version we had in D1. Our team was still working on completing the bridge encounter until the early hours of the morning. I think the main things that are catching players off guard are the new sort of chalice mechanics and how confusing that can potentially get, at least until you're used to encounters. Most of the enemies aren't particularly difficult to kill, but they're definitely more lethal than they were in the Destiny 1 version of the raid, so I'll be jumping back in today working on trying to get that clear, but give us any experiences you've had in Crota's End so far. There are actually 3 hidden chests in the raid though, the first of which is in the Abyss encounter, and it is actually possible to get this one solo, and without running the encounter itself. So right from the beginning of the encounter, there's a clip here from Liam Davis, and if you head forward and to the left hand side, if you hug that left hand wall and follow the doors we can see, the very 5th door on the left hand side actually has one of the hidden chests, so it is possible to sort of skip the first encounter mechanics and just sort of run for it, and you can use something like an eager edge sword to speed up how quickly you can move through it. And once again, the 5th door on the left-hand side has the first hidden chest, so just keep in mind that that one can be grabbed solo. But of course, raid chests will only drop loot that you've already obtained, so might be useful for folks once they've done an initial run or 2 of the raid. And the other 2 chests are a little bit further on. And as we were able to preview about a week or so ago, Crota's End does have some pretty juicy loot. Even some of the cosmetic items are pretty cool, so there's the War's Lament exotic ship, which we can now get a proper preview of, and it has very similar glows to what we get on the armor. But it's also the same for the Crota's Exile Sparrow. There's some pretty cool looking items there, and you can preview the badge for the gear in the game. On top of that though, we have the return of the Husk of the Pit, as well as the Eidolon ally. And obviously players who complete the raid during the contest mode can get access to these 2 weapons and Necrochasm without completing the quest, but the Bottomless Pit quest itself, as we can see here, under normal circumstances, can be picked up from the raid vendor after completing the raid. And the first step is to defeat Hive with the Husk of the Pit, with Husk of the Pit final blows in Crota's End granting additional progress. And so it looks like the second step will be to essentially do the same thing with Eidolon ally, and that third and final step will reward the Necrochasm itself. So cool to have a sort of questified element to Necrochasm. It certainly isn't a difficult quest to get done, but it makes the consistency of actually earning that exotic much easier than what we see normally in raids. And considering how much RNG there typically is for raid exotics, I think it's refreshing to have this option for Crota's End. But once again, give us any thoughts you have on the reprised raid down in the comments section. Up next though, let's move away from the action this weekend, just something worth taking a quick look at right here, but we now have a 3D preview for the Festival of the Lost Armor drop in this season, so this was posted to Reddit by N Frazen, and obviously they are rough 3D renders for the sets this year. We've also seen concept art for the armor sets, which was originally used for the armor voting we had a few months back. Kinda cool right there, I especially like the hunter stuff, that tends to be the case though, and it'll be cool to see these in game. Of course on top of that we spoke about a new weapon that festivals get in this year, so we'll link a video down down below if you want to see perks and things like that for the upcoming event. And otherwise, I'll keep you posted as we get more info. Up next though, we get a better look at the Fireteam Finder for Season 23 and some of the UI for that new function that we'll get next season. So as we can see right here, initially, once it arrives in the game, there'll be an option to either search or create a fire team. And listings for the Fireteam Finder, as we can see right here, will give options to go into campaign content, Crucible, dungeons, but also Gambit, raids, seasonal activities, the Vanguard, and other, which presumably will give players options to list for activities that are outside of sort of endgame content and things like that. And then under activity selection, we can see obviously for raids right here, all of the raids are listed. And they'll have an option to post up for normal or master difficulties. There'll also be a sort of goals tab here as well, where players can define what kind of team they're looking for. So there'll be inclusive options like calling all guardians, but other specific things like looking to help or teaching. And we'll even be able to define that we're communicating with things like Discord or otherwise. And then there's a tags section where we can further define the team as either being things like chill or competitive, looking for fast runs, clan recruiting and things like that, but also more sort of accessibility focused options like hard of hearing, deaf, colorblind and more. So it looks like it will be a fairly comprehensive system in terms of outlining the kind of teams you're looking for. And for lots of players, this is a pretty exciting functionality. It'll definitely be interesting to see what the community response is. Obviously, when LFGing for groups, success certainly isn't a given, and obviously that isn't likely to change just because the function is put into the game, but for folks who use LFG quite a lot, it'll definitely be useful to be able to do this without using third-party tools. And obviously there's that element as well where it will connect immediately to other players, so we won't have to be searching people up on Steam or Xbox or whatever, and it'll make the route into that content much more direct. So cool to get a better look at that system and the UI for it, as well as what some of the options will be, and let us know if you're excited for the introduction of LFG into the game next season. Here though, we get a bit more of a preview of some of the gear for the final shape. So initially, this is the final shape world armor, or the core kind of expansion armor, I suppose. And I would assume, like in previous seasons, we'll be getting drops of this, potentially even in the campaign, or as post-campaign rewards and on the destination. So some pretty cool looking stuff right there. And we've seen this image previously as well, but the main weapons for the expansion will have some really cool skins on them, as we can see. And I like the addition of the Vanguard Mentors as sort of icons on the side of those weapons on the skins. We can see the fusion rifle right there appears to have Ikora on it. I think we can see one with Cade 6 on as well. So let us know what you think of those. Hopefully we get a whole bunch of new perks in the final shape as well. That'll be pretty cool. But finally, there are some screenshots of the Pale Heart destination. One of the things I think is really interesting is that it will feature the tower from D1. But here it's all sort of overgrown with tree stumps and things like that. Although the old Eververse store seems to have survived pretty well despite a bit of grass on the roof, sporting the Eververse logos all over it, in before Bungie add the Eververse store to the new destination. But also cool is that we can see the portal into the Traveler, but from the inside right here. There's a pretty significant contrast in the Pale Heart between different zones and areas. You go from these spaces that are sort of full of life and natural elements to these much darker areas that are reminiscent of the sort of darkness architecture we've seen in other destinations. Creepy statues, upside down pathways, and various other rather curious looking things. So a huge amount of contrast in that space, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and how Bungie populate it. There are also some higher definition images right here of the upcoming supers, which of course once again are light supers in the final shape. So there's the Hunter one right here with an absolutely huge knife, then the Titan, which of course gets the battle axe here, as well as the new Solar Super for Warlocks. So cool to see those in a bit more detail, and let us know what you're thinking about the final shape down below. Obviously they did the huge reveal for final shape in the showcase. We haven't actually had all that much time to talk about that here on the channel with the Season 22 content being live. And now that a bunch of players are reinvested into the game with Season 22, I'd certainly be curious to get your thoughts on what you've seen for the final shape down in the comment section. For today though guys, that's everything we have to speak about in this video, so let us know if you have any thoughts on Crota's End down in the comments as well. If you've enjoyed the video, a rating below really does help us out, and also be sure to get subscribed to the channel so I can keep you posted with more Destiny content. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in today, and I will catch you all very soon.